friend for over a decade, Miss Ruby Amatullah. Ruby is a geopolitical analyst. She's based out of Bangladesh, and she's been a human rights and political activist in the country for almost 3 or 4 decades now. And she writes for the Daily Star as well as the Dhaka Tribune in Bangladesh. She's also blogged all over the world before that, and she has a blog called Letter to America on the internet. I suggest you check it out. Like and subscribe. I am here with Ruby, and we're going to be talking about the last few years in Bangladesh. Welcome, Ruby.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. So tell us about the last year in Bangladesh. Lots has happened.
Yes.
It's a new world out there. Tell us more.
Well, I would like to give you a little backdrop about Bangladesh. And Bangladesh became independent in 1971 after a very bloody liberation war. Hundreds of thousands of people gave their lives. And the goal was to achieve freedom, equality, social justice, and good governance, establishing a functioning democracy. But it never took place. The 54 years have been a failure after failure. 1990s, there was an uprising, there was a movement that ousted the military government at that time, the Ershad, Hossein Ershad government, and the democracy was established. But the political party coming to power did not do the reforms that were needed to be done in order to sustain a democratic, functioning democracy. Mm-hmm. So eventually those kind of dwindled, and it became a dysfunctional democracy. Finally, Sheikh Hasina's Awami League is her party. And actually that is the oldest party in Bangladesh, came to power. Since then, in 2009, and since then she has been an absolute autocrat.
And so then this summer,
finally in summer, the students started a movement on the issue of quota, but then it actually transformed into a national movement, nationwide uprising, and the people of all walks of life joined the uprising, because the pent-up frustrations for 54 years of failure and mismanagement and injustices and oppression and disappearances and unaccountability, none of the institutions working well, and democratic culture never could take place, and all these things have aggravated, or public discontent was so high that when they saw a channel, they all joined. The rickshawalas, the small shopkeepers, the students, the farmers, all joined the movement, and there was nationwide spontaneous movement to topple one of the worst tyrants of our time, because she has captured power almost like, she had total grip on power, like Putin has in Russia. But anyway, she's gone. Now Dr. Yunus has taken, now interim government came into existence, and
that's a big name.
Yes.
That's a big name. Muhammad Yunus is well known not just in Bangladesh, but among the international development aid community. He's quite a famous figure. And how's he doing?
He's not a politician, but he is an asset to Bangladesh. He is a asset in the sense that he attracts investment. All the global leaders are talking to him. He just made a visit to China. Xi Jinping sent a special plane to take him to China. And
That's a little
that
weird.
was a very, yes, it's a rare case. And in the Great Hall, rarely Chinese, unless China gives enormous importance to a head of state, they don't hold meeting in Great China, Great Hall.
So it
of
looks like
China.
there's a lot of
So
eyes.
that-
So it
that-
looks like there's a lot of eyes on Bangladesh
Yes,
right now.
and also India, finally, Modi also started dialoguing with him. So it's going, but the thing is that bottom line is that we have to do reform in order to save Bangladesh from repeating itself. The past, in order to stop history to repeat itself in Bangladesh, we have to reform the system. That's
So,
the
like-
bottom line.
So what I see with reform movements, you and I have worked on quite a
So-
few reform movements in the past. We've worked with the Egyptian April 6th movement activists. We've worked with the Iranian diaspora community. We've worked with the Afghan American community. And what we see is that after popular movements to topple the status quo, there's that doesn't necessarily get rid of the status quo. There's a lot of the same old bad guys hidden in the shadows, and sometimes they make everything worse. So in Bangladesh right now, some of Sheikh Hasina's regime, the old guard, are they still in the background? Like, are they still?
They are insidious. They are infiltrated throughout the society. I mean, that's taken. But the point is that unless the reforms is done, a sufficient reform, not all reform. Now, the main struggle is that the main political party right now is BNP, Bangladesh Nationalist Party. And they are saying that let's give the election and let us be in power and parliament will do the reform. But the point is, when they were in power, 3 times they were in power, they did not do a single reform. Even they agreed with other political parties in 90s to do some essential reforms. When they came to power, they did not do the reform. So people do not trust that they will do the reform. And so there is a struggle going on, and Dr. Yunus is not very interested to stay in power. I mean, he's saying that if everybody wants it, I want to hold the election.
He's pretty old.
Well, he's old, but he's also very honest and frank. He's saying that I'm not a politician and I'm not going to do politics. After this is over, after handing over power, I'm going to go back to my own life. So we are saying, the activists, we are saying that this is the government which holds a historic mandate. It's not election mandate, but it's historic mandate. Lots of people have given up lives, about 1,400 according to the United Nations count. And in a month, and 26,000, 27,000 people are injured, 600 people lost their eyesight. All these people fought to with the message that we do not want the past to repeat again. That's the message of the movement. The message, if there is one single message of the entire movement, that is the collective will of the people, you may say, is that we do not want past to repeat. We want a functioning democracy, and we want good governance.
And so, one of the main problems one of the main problems with making sure that the past doesn't repeat itself is sometimes you literally have to change the whole foundation.
Yes.
For instance, the national constitution. One of the big first kind of sticking points after any revolution is reforming the constitution to make sure that the country just works properly from first principles.
Yes.
So, and I know that's coming up. So, what are they talking about in Bangladesh regarding constitution?
What we are saying is that with this historic mandate, which we think is much higher mandate than an election give to a government, because the election gives a mandate of status quo. You run the country. But this historic mandate is telling the government, the interim government, that you do the reform so that past cannot repeat and autocrats cannot come back to power. So the only way you can do that is to reform the system. And one of the most important reforming of the system consists of changing the constitution, the rule of law. The source of rule of law is the constitution. So we are saying that this constitution reform must be done by this interim government under their supervision, not by an elected government later on whose the nation will be again dependent on their whims, whether they will do the reform or not do the reform, if the people cannot trust any political party. Another problem is that right now there is no strong opposition to Bangladesh Nationalist BNP party. They are the biggest party, and if they go to power, they are going to monopolize the whole situation, and we are again back to square again. Okay. So in this difficult situation, that what we are suggesting is that there has to be broad consensus, first of all, among the stakeholders. And we are proposing that not only the politicians and political parties that should come to the table, but also the representatives of NGOs and labor unions, trade unions, and civil society members, and should come together. Like Tunisia had like 155 members in Ben Achour Commission that actually got the consensus done before actually taking it to the referendum and get it passed by referendum.
So like in the news right now in Bangladesh.
Yes, we are saying that I think the most effective way and the shortest way to do the reform, the most critical part of the reform is changing the constitution.
It sounds actually like Bangladesh is pretty vulnerable right now. You know, some of the biggest political institutions in the country are notoriously corrupt. And in order to decorruptify the institutions, it's necessary to make sure that there's a nonpartisan and almost sterile process to make sure that things come together in the first year or two. And it sounds like what you're saying is that especially the framing of the Constitution needs to be done in a nonpartisan way. Now, also, like I see elections being a big problem as well. When elections are associated with money is associated with bribes, and then that will just bring about the same system all over again with a different name. So, like, what type of elections need to occur first? What type of elections would need to occur later? What's the best way to make sure that elections also move forward in a same?
First of all, the electoral system needs to be reformed, and it's not easy to reform the electoral system so easily. There are 44,000 polling stations, and in order to control those and give them security, give them freedom, and because there were a lot of manipulations in the past and rigged elections, it is a daunting task. So what we are suggesting, that a lot of people are saying that, and I am particularly saying, advocating this, that after having a consensus among different parties about the main basic structure of the Constitution, let's take the Constitution to the referendum, to people's vote, because referendum is the highest legitimacy in a country. If the people validate a system, there is there is nothing that can change it, like Bill of Rights in the United States have not changed in 250 years.
And it'll help people to start having an educated conversation
in
about
order to change that again, you have to have referendum again. So that is, we are posing a hurdle before like any political party coming to power and changing their terms. Like Sheikh Hasina has changed the past constitutions into a mockery, absolutely a joke.
And also, like, I feel also like just having a conversation like that in the public, in the media, amongst ordinary people will get people excited as well.
Right.
It will make politics more of an intimate, in-person thing rather than some detached thing that people have no control over. And I feel like that's one of the problems in the U.S. nowadays is they occupy everybody with bread and circuses, but the big stuff in society, corporate control of elections, foreign policy, Americans feel like they have no individual power over it, you know, and giving Bangladeshis a sense of agency, autonomy is really important right now, right?
So, what we think is that America has a role to play, a very big role to play in helping Bangladesh get on the right course of democracy. And it is good for America, it is also good for Bangladesh. I want to tell you one example. Like in 2021, America imposed Magnitsky sanction against 8 criminal RAB leaders. And after that, the climate totally changed. And the streets were buzzing with, like, you know, people were on the streets and political parties came alive, and no extrajudicial killing, no harassment. So the political atmosphere changed overnight. But then America kind of like stepped back and did nothing. So again, the Sheikh Hasina's thinking, this is a time that America can make a big difference. Other countries also, but I think that America is a democratic country, and it has a democratic culture, and its involvement is always going to be very influential and decisive at this stage.
So stopping you there. So like when when everybody talks about America getting involved in other parts of the world, it's just red flags go up everywhere because America's done a lot of horrible stuff all over the world. And I mean the new Trump America First stuff asks, well, why should America get involved in anything? It's other countries' problems. Let them handle it themselves. So what you're saying though is Bangladesh should handle stuff themselves, but they might need a little bit of extra help. So explain a little more, why is America so important specifically to Bangladesh?
Look, we live in a global society, intensely interconnected and interdependent. None of the countries exist in isolation. And that is the reason America has been interested in Bangladesh for a long time, for geopolitical interest. China is extremely interested in having its influence in Bangladesh. So is India. I mean, India is actually turned Bangladesh into a vassal state that people do not like. People want freedom. People want relationship on mutual interest and mutual respect between two countries. So I'm saying it's America's interest to help democracy flourish and to be on the side of the people in Bangladesh, because look what happened when CIA destroyed burgeoning democracy in Iran. America was a good power. America had a moral voice in the world. After the Marshall Plan, the world actually looked up to America for leadership. But after Iran, after Guatemala, after Congo, America became an imperial power, an evil power. And with that, anywhere America got involved, America was defeated and paid trillions of dollars in cost. We believe that if America is on the side of the people, then America can get most of its global objectives achieved at a fraction of the price that it has paid. And it is a win-win situation. But elites of the United States are colluding with elites of other countries. The transnational elites are extremely powerful and getting powerful. Now, how this vicious cycle can be broken is that Bangladeshis, for example, Bangladeshis in this country can be very active, participate in politics, and not only participate in politics, but they can be activists, and they take serious interest in changing what is going on in Bangladesh. Then Washington will take a note because Bangladeshis are citizens of this country. And the other thing is that there are about 53, 54 Muslim majority countries. They are not, except one or two right now, they are not very good situation. So it is their interest, the Muslims' interest in this country, and Bangladeshi in particular, a lot of interest in changing, helping both Bangladesh and the United States together.
Whenever people start pulling out big words, I get nervous. Because often when they use big words, that's kind of an excuse for special interests to start doing stuff behind the scenes. And right now in the news in Bangladesh, we're seeing big words. I hear the words proportional representation. I hear the words constituent assembly. And for our readers and for our viewers, I'd like for you to kind of define what those mean. So we've spoken about this before, and you've mentioned that proportional representation is essential to make sure that the Constitution gets reformed properly. Define for us what proportional representation actually means.
Actually, proportional representation is a coalition facilitating system. It's the electoral process that will always produce coalition government, power sharing government. And in Bangladesh, we need power sharing government in order for to sustain democracy in the long run. We need to have multi-party political landscape in which the political system would be inclusive and also kind of like power sharing or coalition facilitating system. That is the only way moving forward. Any party now coming to power with majority or two-third majority, even worse, two-third majority is a killer of democracy. But even with majority, the problem is that they consolidate power, and the main reason is that our systems are all dysfunctional. Not only dysfunctional, those are rotten to the core because of the endemic corruption, abuse of power. It is the mindset of the people who have run the country, whether under this party or that regime or this regime, has been doing the same over and over again for 54 years. It's very difficult to break that trend. And what we are suggesting from civil society members is that to break that trend, that kind of quagmire, to pull the country out of that quagmire, we have to have good reforms. And the reform commissions have suggested some excellent reforms. For example, proportional representation, not adequate enough. We want more proportional, 100% proportional representation. But anyway, they proposed two houses. They proposed National Constitution Council, which is an excellent checks and balance mechanism. So those are the things that could be part of the basic structure of the Constitution. The basic structure means the part of the Constitution that cannot be easily changeable, even with two-third majority. They are the backbone of a republic.
And so so they use another buzzword, constituent assembly. What's the difference between the Constituent Assembly approach and what you're describing, and why is it bad?
Constituent Assembly is like a parliament. There would be an election, and then in election, most likely BNP is going to have a majority in that Constituent Assembly. And if they do, then they are going to have an upper hand in framing the Constitution.
And now why would BNP win? Why would BNP win a lot of seats? Why would the BNP win a lot of seats? Why would that happen?
Because they are the only major party right now in existence. All parties are negligible parties. The parties that are just coming up, new parties, or even older parties that are do not have that influence that they can carry more than 5 or 10 seats in the parliament. And so what we are suggesting is that if it is a multi-party inclusive political landscape, then then it is a coalition kind of government. It produces coalition government, and they are interdependent. Unless and until we have a very strong opposition, and without strong opposition, democracy cannot survive. None of the democracy in history ever has survived without strong opposition party. We do not have strong opposition party.
And
so we are in a predicament right now, in a serious predicament, that in order to get out of it, we have to be very creative, we have to be very innovative, and we need to be very assertive and determined to bring it to fruition.
You know, looking at Muslim Americans as a whole and zooming in on Bangladeshi Americans,
yes.
They're often well-to-do. They often have very good jobs.
Yes.
They have a lot of money.
Yes.
They have a lot of. They might not have a lot of time, but they have a lot of resources to donate. They're in certain, key demographic constituencies for key politicians: the New York City area, the Minnesota area, the Texas area, the Los Angeles area. Do you think they're civically active enough?
I don't think they are active enough, and I think they could do better. I mean, they could be more involved and make a difference. And that difference eventually in the long run is going to benefit both. See, they are the common denominator. They are part of America and they are part of the other side, like in Bangladesh. And many of the Bangladeshis migrated. This is the first generation immigrants. And there are second generation, even third generation, but they are fewer. And I'm addressing all of them that we live in a global society and we cannot isolate ourselves. So it is extremely important that we take seriously what happens here, always ripple effect in having effect in Bangladesh. And good governance, particularly if America can establish that America has helped Bangladesh, stay in the path of democracy, in sustaining democracy, then America's reputation, America's image will change in the world overnight.
And it sounds like America's reputation could go either way in Bangladesh right now. For instance, like the Magnitsky Act, everybody was giving serious props to America for forcing those sanctions, but many others would argue that there could have been much more that America could have done over the last few years. Like, what else could they have done in the last few years?
Oh, they could have done enormous. See, 80 to 85% garments are imported in this country. Bangladeshi garments, 80 to 80. America has enormous leverage. America has granted $8 billion to Bangladesh since its inception. Not aid, not predatory loan. Some countries like hook you up with loan and then you have a hard time paying, like China confiscated the port in Sri Lanka. And so not that kind of thing. America has given the money not to return. And so the America has enormous influence if it wants to, but then American Bangladeshis has to voice that give signals to Washington to make those changes take place. And that's why we are trying to arrange a congressional committee to visit Bangladesh, right? And hopefully the congressional committee will say the things that are right for Bangladesh, to be on the right side of history and helping Bangladesh to be on a democratic path.
So do you think that most American politicians are invested in Bangladesh becoming a more open society? Or do you think that, because a lot of people are worried that American politicians, they're too bought out by special interests or bought out by lobbyists to really want to do the right thing. What would you say to the pessimists who say that trying to lobby American politicians is a waste of time regarding Bangladesh?
It's a very good question. America is not a monolithic country. And American elite and American people in the world, people have often misconception. Countless people have misconception about America. Like Bangladeshis I talk to, they see America as a monolithic evil power. But there are a lot of good forces in America, particularly in civil society. I'm particularly advocating people-to-people movement and government-to-government movement, government-to-government engagement, constructive engagement, fine, but there has to be backed up by people-to-people movement. Bangladeshis should reach out to good forces in America and not negate them, not reject them. They have been rejecting. I suggest that is counterproductive. And so I think that American civil society should work with Bangladeshi civil society and vice versa, and to make sure their governments engage constructively. And behind it all is the American Bangladeshis who are going to be active, participating, and making the differences, and coming to the fore with the voice that Bangladesh is not only one country, but it's a symbolic country. If from tyranny to democracy, America can help, then America can help in other countries.
Because with what you're telling me about Bangladesh right now, the classic thing Trump would say is, we don't want to worry about these shithole countries. But from what you're telling me, Bangladesh does not seem like a shithole country at all. It seems like it's geopolitically a strategic interface between
Yes.
South Asia and East Asia.
Yes.
It sounds to me like it's stuck in the middle of multiple great powers
Yes.
that America has very dicey relationships with.
Yes.
Tell me more about why you think Bangladesh is geopolitically very strategic.
Well, as I said, that Bangladesh is connecting South Asia with Southeast Asia in a critical place. And if you look at it, China, Russia, India, all are nearby. And it's maritime, it's a Bay of Bengal. Maritime is an asset for the world. It could be a manufacturing hub of the world. And that is what articulated by our chief advisor, Professor Yunus, just recently, and rightfully so, because this connectivity is so good.
The Bay of Bengal was
Yes.
not just a historic...
And not only that, China has upper hand or control in South China Sea, but in order to retain that, China also wants to have a firm grip on Bay of Bengal. If that is the case, then America actually is going to lose big time. And Bangladesh's 80 to 85% garments come from Bangladesh. Bangladesh is exported to the United States. Right now, electronic business, IT business, few days ago, the Starlink, what is that? It was offered by
Starlink. By everybody's favorite, Elon Musk.
Elon Musk. Did talk to him. Elon Musk did talk to him about the possibility. And India is actually envious about that, because India wants that connection in India. And if Bangladesh is the hub of that, Bangladesh is a great connectivity, then it is both America is the winner and Bangladesh is the winner.
Now that's a little
So
interesting.
many things like
Yeah.
that. Many things like that.
But it's interesting you brought up Elon Musk, though, because this is not somebody who you would immediately think would be invested in building the capacity of a low-income country. But it seems like there's a bipartisan interest to some degree, maybe one more than the other, in making sure that Bangladesh is a stable country. Like, do you think that? I mean, everybody knows we could convince Democratic politicians, progressive Democratic politicians, that Bangladesh is important. Do you think that we could convince Republicans as well? Do you think we could convince the America First people that Bangladesh is important?
This is the key. The key issue here is stability. How do you stabilize the country? You stabilize the country by having a good democratic system, a system that is sustainable. When you have puppets and authoritarian government, autocratic government, your future is unstable. That's what happened in Bangladesh. I mean, Sheikh Hasina had so much power, but could not hang on to the power because she's extremely unpopular government, and she had all the support of India. India is next door power. Despite that, Sheikh Hasina could not stay in power. So, in order to establish a stabilize a country, developing country, you have to ensure that its system is in place, a democratic system that is sustainable.
And it sounds to me like a lot of people want power over Bangladesh, but it seems to me like what is in everybody's best interest is not necessarily having power of it, but making sure that it's stable and it has power of its own.
Right.
Like to describe, like what changes do you think would make the Bangladeshi people have control over their own destiny? Like,
well, when a government is accountable to the people, and when a system runs and a system is founded on sound principles and ideas, and it progresses, then two things happens. One is that a democratic culture or consensus gets established in the hearts and minds of people. That is the most powerful thing to sustain democracy. To sustain democracy, you have to have democratic culture, democratic mindset.
Like, and I remember
and that needs system.
Like, I remember seeing pictures of like right after Sheikh Hasina left, everybody was like cleaning up the streets.
Yes.
Like a week after, and I like for my visit to Dhaka,
and volunteers.
My visit to Dhaka, the streets were not that clean, and so it was a tremendous mindset change.
Yes,
a tremendous burst of enthusiasm.
Absolutely.
And it seems to me like the Bangladeshis on the street, they're not going to go back to being poor. They really want to move up as hard and as fast as possible.
There is a big mindset change.
And now, like,
it has to match with the paradigm shift in system.
And like from our experience working with other countries before too, like one of the things that really would stick and cause problems after any revolution was, polarization between different groups in the country. Like, and always everybody says the conflicts between the Islamists and the secular groups in society are like one of the key things that messes stuff up in Muslim countries. Do you think that that Bangladesh is polarized between Islamist and secular groups? Do you think that's the right way to look at Bangladesh's kind of political makeup? Like,
well, look, the best way to marginalize extremism is you engage parties in constructive process, and a political system, a democratic political system is a very powerful field of constructive engagement. Look at what is that South American country, that Colombia, and they had 50-year civil war. Finally, they decided they are going to engage constructively. And rebels, lifelong rebels, became polished politicians through the process of democracy.
This was a few decades ago. But
And
yes.
that is the thing that we need to bring. Look at Tunisia, what Tunisia did. It was almost at the brink of civil war between secular forces and Islamist forces after 2011 Jasmine Revolution. This is an extreme example. And what happened is that under Rashid Ghanouchi's leadership, and he is an Islamist leader, what he decided is constructive engagement with the secular parties and the Islamist parties.
And it looks like he came up with a win-win situation for
is.
before special interests got involved. Yeah.
For 10 years, it has sustained a functioning democracy, despite that Western world, Israel, Middle Eastern countries boycotted that country, did not give any financial help, the financial help that was badly needed in that country, except Qatar gave some help. So despite all that, they sustained 10 years of constructive engagement, democratic process, genuine democratic process, under the leadership of Rashid Ghanouchi as well as the secular leaders.
So what you're describing is both pathways and models for Bangladesh to come up with, governmental system that's a win-win for all the polarized voices in society. The Islamists could be happy, secular liberals could be happy, the previous remnants of the old guard could potentially be happy. It sounds like we're coming up with a win-win situation for everybody.
Look, if you give a fair chance, if you create a system that offers fair chance, then everybody is happy, because everybody knows they will have their turn. They will have their place in future. Their future is secured. When future is secured, then everybody is interested in participating in politics. We have been saying that all the time. We are saying that establish a functioning democracy. See, the West always is screaming about extremism, radicalism, and all these things. But they are the biggest hindrance before democratic system in developing countries. They are the root reason why extremism took place on those countries. If you give them democracy, if the country is stable, and you give hope to it's a fair system that everybody can participate, people are going to be more liberal, they are more to be less extreme, and the country will move towards a better path.
I mean, and there's example after example in the dust on the ground as to how America screwed up countries that were on their way to a system with checks and balances. For instance, in Iraq,
absolutely,
Iraq is an example of what not to do with constitutional reform, as we've talked about.
One example I want to say is that the 2005 election in Iraq, okay, that election was a fair election. It was not rigged election, but this election was for creating a constituent assembly to frame constitution. But before that election, they did not do the reform. They did not have the consensus building among the three vital ethnic groups, Shia, Sunni, and Kurds. And they did not do that, so it was a recipe of disaster. The Constituent Assembly itself is the reason why a functioning government could not take place in Iraq for next 2 decades, and the country got involved in the civil war, ethnic civil war. So Constituent Assembly is not a solution, and it is not a solution for Bangladesh today. And we have to come to consensus.
And it seems to me like this is actually, Muslims in America are obviously focused on a lot of different stuff right now, including, a few really horrible issues, genocide in Palestine, genocide in Sudan, genocide in moving towards truth and reconciliation in Syria. They're focused on a lot of different stuff, but it seems to me also like Muslim Americans should also think more about Bangladesh, because Bangladesh is an opportunity to break the
Gate.
narrative of fatalism in the
Right.
Muslim world.
Right.
Like
It's a paradigm shift.
Yeah.
If it can happen there, it can happen in the Middle East. And the thing is that Muslim Americans must be united. It is one key factor is they need to be united on the basis of the key issues for injustice and good governance. The Palestinian case is a glaring example that has been taking place. It is the struggle between the elites and the common people. The common people have been bluffed, misinformed, and misled. And that is the reason why it took place. But if the American Muslims participate in that and inform, they become also a PR group in informing the rest of the mainstream Americans what is actually going on.
Yeah, and it sounds like American Muslims are kind of an untapped resource
Yes.
in America.
Yes.
You know, like
absolutely.
Trump says he wants to deport immigrants. You know, well, you're going to deport every Muslim dentist from Iowa. You're going to, deport like some of the, Pakistani and Arab immigrants who, are the key healthcare resource for half the hospitals in heartland America. It sounds like Muslim Americans are, there's a lot of fear mongering about them, but they're actually like a very useful resource in foreign policy.
For America.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
absolutely.
What do you think it's going to take in order to, and I know AIPAC is not a good analogy, but what is it going to take for American Muslims to form, their own foreign policy advocacy that's equal in strength, not an evil, but equal in strength to AIPAC or groups like that? Because Israelis have no problem lobbying the United States on behalf of their own interests, no matter how bad they are, no matter how bad they are to American interests as well. They have no problem doing that. Well, what do you think it's going to take to get Muslim Americans as politically empowered as other countries are?
See, the thing is that American Muslims are the common denominator. They are in a critical place, in critical time of history, both of the United States as well of their native countries. And I think that if they are united, see, the reason AIPAC is powerful because actually the Zionist supporters or pro-Israeli supporters are united. And they are pouring their money, their effort, Muslims can do the same thing. In number, we are close, The numbers are not very far off. So united on the basis of what? United on the basis of justice, united on the basis of good governance, and united so that America's moral voice and leadership gets established in the world as it was in the 20th century. That is what Muslims can do to this country.
And people will say like, we already have Muslim advocacy organizations, and they're doing a lot of good work. We need key people to make sure that the immigration policies and the civil rights policies of American Muslims are protected. What could Muslim advocacy organizations be doing better?
Their main focus right now should be to groom young generations to go to Washington, to become representatives of the people. They become the politicians. That should be the focus of all the major Muslim organizations, that sending best and dedicated mind to Washington.
Now, people would say that Muslims getting elected, like in swing states, for instance, that's hard. They think it's kind of like having like a big red stamp on your head saying unelectable. Do you think Muslims are electable?
Of course, go back in history of this country. All ethnic groups faced biggest hurdle to get involved in the political process, but that didn't stop them to change the landscape. They got involved and they changed the landscape, and that is why this country is phenomenally successful. The country is phenomenally successful because it is an immigrant country. It has drawn the best. It has attracted the best and the brightest in this country, and also got everything from this diverse population. And that is the secret of America's success. The European Union tried that, but not very successfully. America is the phenomenally success story of 20th century, and it could be 21st century also, if that continues.
And it also seems like as well that people will say that they're unelectable, but there's actually, whole neighborhoods, communities, towns where Muslim American immigrants are a huge part of the voting base.
Yes.
I mean, you
Yes.
you go to Minneapolis, Ilhan Omar's voting base is,
Yes,
every Somali laborer in the entire downtown Minneapolis.
Look at how adolescents, the people like them have tried to change her, rob her candidacy, but couldn't, because the constituency is solid behind that.
You're talking about
So
Sheldon.
we have to
You're talking
have-
about Sheldon Adelson for
Yes,
the audience.
Sheldon
Yeah.
Adelson. Yes, Muslim Americans can learn from there, from the Somalian community. They are good examples for us.
So do you think that it's mostly going to be young Muslims who are going to make a difference? If it's going to be older people with more experience, I don't, because people will say that more young people should run for office. Do you think that young people are the solution?
Well, young people always have brought fresh blood and fresh thinking. They are more dedicated, they are young, they are vigorous and all that. But that doesn't exclude more mature people and more seasoned politicians that are there among the Muslims, the scholars, the intellectuals. They can participate in you have to do the legwork. You have to work. Yes, you may get defeated in one election, in the next election, but you may win thereafter. So you have to be consistent. You cannot lose heart because you got defeated in one election. You lose heart. And you need to be united. You need to get connected with your people. You need to get connected with the mainstream. You should not make an issue of us versus them. I think this country this country is one of the most pluralistic, open society. This is the asset, this is the most important quality, both for mainstream Americans as well as for the immigrant societies that come and be part of this society and make this country a great country.
And it seems like a lot of the first generation Muslim Americans as well, they don't have as many kind of conflicts of interest as well. They don't always have kind of like threats of immigration hanging in the back of their mind. They're we've already kind of broken the ice with Muslims in this country. Yeah. We've already kind of had 20 years of angry initial conversations. We're no longer an unfamiliar face anymore. I feel like younger groups of people, they have an opportunity to push the conversation in a different way.
Yeah. And the thing is that second generation, third generation Americans are Americans absolutely. I mean, you talk to them, they are Americans. So I think that this is a lot of prejudice mongering and racism and negativity comes into Islamophobia, xenophobia, that kind of thing is always part of this story. But you have to break through the ice.
Do you think?
You have to get involved in the work. Say, look, one thing I want. Okay, go ahead. You asked me the question.
I mean, do you think Americans are really all that racist?
No.
Yeah.
I do not think Americans are all racist. Yeah. But the thing is that they have been victim of predatory elites who 30, 40 years ago decided to divide the country to rule. And so they are victim. So the way they divided the country is racism, Islamophobia, xenophobia, Christian right movement, and white supremacist movement. All these things are bigotry and racism and all these things. These are the tools of the elites to divide a country. And the Muslims should fight against that. And mainstream Americans, young generation Americans should fight against that.
So you think it
to
was
reclaim it.
So you think it was baked into, corporate elites, like Plan for America. You think Islamophobia was kind of baked into that?
Yes, absolutely. It is the narrative that is created by them. It is absolutely their brainchild. Because look at what C. Wright Mills wrote in his book, The Power Elite, how the elite works. They are actually, they collude with each other to consolidate power, and they are extremely organized and they are relentless. The common people are not united that much. Common people are not that determined. So elites win and the common people loses. What I'm saying is that in this time and age when technology is so advanced and we are intensely connected, highly connected people in the world, this is the time we can break that ice, we can break that barrier, and the common people can be in charge of.
Yeah, and like when it comes to like just ordinary American culture, I don't really see many Americans thinking that negatively about Islam. Like you look in the news, like one of the main actors from a new show on Netflix, they asked him, like, what do you do to relax? And he said, I meditate and I have a Quran next to me by my bed and I read verses from the Quran. And this is like the whitest guy imaginable.
Yes.
And in many ways, maybe the last person you would want advocating about Islam. But it seems like Islam doesn't have that immediate kind of like punch against the wall effect that it used to have.
No. But also the big iconic figures like Denzel Washington and Angelina Jolie and what was the other iconic figure? They are declaring they're Muslims and that how they became Muslim.
Well, yeah, Denzel Washington played a Muslim very devoutly for, I believe, 12 months.
He's not Muslim?
He's not technically Muslim, but for a year he was an honorary Muslim because of the depth he went to portray Malcolm X.
And recent discussions.
Well, I'll show you. I'll Google that for you on TMZ later on. But
anyway, I'm not talking about pinpointing one or two people, but I'm saying that when a ethnic groups comes to a mainstream people and they do not look themselves as us versus them, instead they look themselves as part of the society, that they came here for a reason. God has brought them here for a reason to make this society better. If this society is better, this country is better, the world is a better place. Because Washington always has enormous effect in the world.
Do you think America is destined to be a negative force in the world?
No, not at all. America was a positive force since Woodrow Wilson declared his 14 points in 1918.
Because people will say
more than 100 years ago.
Because like Americans mostly think like from the Vietnam War onwards, and the average American's like a guy my age, like all we saw was September 11th, Iraq, Guantanamo Bay. Six major corporations controlling all them.
Stories.
But what you and I have always talked about is it didn't used to be that way.
No, I think that people should just look back and see the spirit of America. America was founded on the declaration that all human beings are created equal and God has given them inalienable rights. That is a fantastic statement that started. Yes, I know that at that time ground was different. Half of the population could not vote and there were substantial part were slaves. But the thing is that this country has struggled through 200 years plus to change these things. And the struggle is going on and the Muslims can be part of that positive struggle. Why we are always seeing the negative things? Why we are not seeing the positive things? Vietnam was a failure, and so was Iraq and Afghanistan and all these things. But these are the failures brought about by the elites, not the people. People were misinformed, misled. People are as much a victim, American people, as outside people are.
Yeah, and even though we had
They have ended up paying 12, 14, 15 trillion dollars in their tax money for this failed agenda where elites made money and the common people paid the price.
And even though we had like the Vietnam War, and even though we had, you know, the Israeli takeover of U.S. politicians, like at the same time, the U.S. was instrumental in forming the UN.
You know,
It
was.
The U.S. was instrumental in the League of Nations. You know, like
Yes.
they were, you know, they were key in some of the.
The Universal Declaration of Human Rights was actually the United States brainchild.
And you know, do you think we have a chance to bring that spirit back again? You know, like
I absolutely believe that this is a democratic country. See, China is not a democratic country. I hope one day it would be a democratic country. Russia is not a democratic country. It's now ruled by Russian people are hostage of Putin administration, Putin government. But America is a free country, still a democratic country, even though the deep state is powerful, elites are on the upper, in the driving seat, but institutions are still there. Democracy is still in the mind of many people, and many students look at the movement. How many colleges, universities fought for? How many people fought for Palestinian cause? And it is waking up the American mind. And Muslim Americans could be instrumental in that.
because a lot of my friends, after seeing what Israel did after October 7th, seeing how the U.S. supported all of that, a lot of my friends, understandably so, will say like, nothing could be better for the world now than the fall of the United States. Like, it doesn't sound like you agree with that.
No, it is the same in many places. I hear that in Bangladesh all the time. I mean, they think America is an evil imperial power. It should not get involved anywhere. It should just disappear. So negative feelings like that. But I'm saying that this is also based on wrong information, miscommunication, and lack of constructive engagement and dialogue. And those are the things that common denominators can help achieve.
And it seems like that, you know, some people will be like, well, why can't the EU just take over if America goes down? Can't the EU take over the reins of democracy? Do you think that would work?
No.
No, why not?
I don't think America, I personally think that America right now is in a very bad situation because it's elite controlled, and it is doing a lot of negative things, monstrous things. It is a partner in genocide in Palestine. It's an unforgivable thing for a democratic country. But I still believe America can be reclaimed, America can be reinstated, and this is the country, if Washington has good leadership, world can be a better place. There is no doubt about it.
And it seems like America, in many ways, even though it does a lot of bad stuff, on certain key issues, they're like the one pillar of democracy, kind of keeping the global democratic order together. And I know when people say words like New World Order, Global Order, everybody starts thinking conspiratorially about it, but those are real things. Right. You know, the pillars of the UN and the democratic order, they're real ideas, you know.
And the world order saved a lot of wars that could have taken place.
And
the rule of law was established. If you look at like 60s, 70s, 80s, by 60s, 32 countries became independent from their colonial ruler. And colonial rule completely got abolished. Why? Because of the agenda of Woodrow Wilson, agenda of Franklin D. Roosevelt. And there's no denial of that America had an influence, enormous influence in helping world.
And like
actually.
the Marshall Plan and the reconstruction
And
of
the
Germany
Marshall
and
Plan.
Japan, those are almost on the level of like the
Yes.
Treaty of Hudaybiyah in terms
Yes.
of their
And
ability
not,
to
not
like.
only that,
Yeah,
who
yeah.
ended the Cold War?
Yeah.
The Cold War was ended by constructive engagement with China, the China policy in 70s and 80s, and detente with the Soviet Union in 80s brought the Cold War down. Those initiatives were taken by the American diplomats.
And I remember reading. I suffered through all this. I read all 500 pages of Obama's, memoirs while he was president, and there's lots in there that annoys me. But there are a few things that I saw that were interesting. And I remember he talked about, when working with the EU, when working with specifically stuff involving the civil rights of minorities, if America wasn't proactive and if America didn't act first, a lot of the European countries would get kind of bogged down in their own internal grievances.
Yes.
And he felt like that was one of the key parts of America being kind of a force for leadership in the world. And so it sounds like if America
Yes.
goes down, global democracy is going to go down.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
in a yes and no. But as I said, that first you have to reclaim Washington. You have to reclaim American democracy first, before you can say that America has a positive role to play in the world.